So anyway, I am here to present a session on how to start a high school apologetics class. But before we get too far into it, you should know I just changed the title. Don't tell Mr. Swart. It's a little bit more accurate, I think. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Kari, and I am actually the world's worst person at taking family photos. So you won't find any of these kind of family photos, but that's probably good. When I do remember to take them, it's mainly just these kinds of photos, and I'm really good at selfies. Anyway, as you can see, I'm a wife and a mom, and I'm completely surrounded by boys. That's my sister down in front. We are completely outnumbered. All my boys became teens at about the same time, and in between breaking up fights and homeschooling and keeping them alive for another day, I was starting to get worried about the culture getting increasingly dark and hostile, and they were growing up way too fast. And as our church's apologetics ministry got going, I realized that this is probably where the truth could be learned in a way that we could apply it to normal everyday life. So then our church's co-op that we went to for homeschool said, you guys can teach whatever you want to. So I jumped in to volunteer to teach apologetics, because I knew that it would be a great way to help myself and even other students along with my boys. Since I was teaching, my boys didn't get a choice. So they got to do that. I was scared because I certainly didn't know everything about apologetics. But after teaching other co-op classes for like the sciences and art and everything, I knew the best way to learn a subject is to actually teach a subject. I knew just enough of the basics of apologetics, like what you've learned if you've been at the conference so far, that I could at least start. And the need outweighed my comfort, and I just decided to go ahead and do it scared. So in this session, we're going to actually talk about some tools, some techniques, and some tips to make it easy for you to facilitate your own class and impact the teens in your world. And as a bonus, I'm going to have actually two of my former students here at the end of the Q&A session, so you can ask them if what I'm saying really is true. They can verify it. So I want to be sure for you to walk away with the confidence that you actually could do this. You could actually sign up and facilitate an apologetics class in your city. And I'm going to be a little bit of a crazy motivational speaker, and I'm going to tell you, you absolutely can do this. So let's talk about what it takes to successfully facilitate a class. You need a few key things for sure. First is you're going to need a good curriculum. You're going to need a desire to learn and research. And I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks that might help you with your class. The things that you don't actually need: you do not need an advanced degree, a teaching degree, or anything like that. And you don't need an exhaustive knowledge of all apologetics topics. And I'll say it again, you can do this. So let's look first at what today's teens are dealing with and why you can help. So they are up against persuasive and convincing lies from the culture, and they're trying to sift through those. In fact, during one of our class sessions, we were discussing some of these lies that the world shouts at us, and I handed each student a pad of sticky notes, and I had them write down some of them and stick them on the board. And here's some of what you see there. Here's some of what they said. Some of the lies that they've been hearing are: suicide is the only way to escape. You do you, no matter what. Do what makes you happy. Your body, your choice. Christian beliefs are unrealistic and lack any evidence. Sin is okay if it makes you feel good. And without God, you don't have to feel guilty. And science proves everything. Your faith is blind. I mean, you can see the board was just full of all of these. And after a few minutes, they had just listed dozens and dozens of them. Now, before you get scared and think I cannot answer those questions, the good thing is we didn't even really answer any of these questions in that class session. But what I think was amazing is that the kids were actually able to talk about some of these lies and agree, yeah, that's right, I've heard that too. So it was more for them, and then obviously for me too, because I wanted to hear, how their experience and how they experience life. Then another thing that they're facing is lies from their own hearts. So as we all know, it's really easy to mistake those lies for truth. And our heart is deceitful, yet teens are often more prone to trust it than the truth of God's word. All of us are. So again, in class, I had them write down, after they did the lies in the world post-its, I had them keep that same sticky pad and write down some of the lies in their own hearts. And this was where it was really interesting. They had way more to write, and they filled the whole board. And while in the moment, they were able to recognize those as lies, in their day-to-day life, they often act on them as truth. Some of the lies that they struggle with are, you aren't worth anything, your friends don't really like you, you're too far gone, God will eventually give up on you, I have no value, God is mad at you, you can't be saved. These are the ones that they need to discuss and talk to mature believers about. These, plus the lies in the world, are what they need to learn to untangle and hold up to the truth of God's word. This is the awesome opportunity that lies before you should you choose to accept this mission, and you should. Again, we didn't discuss each of these individually, and I didn't even dole out nice answers to them. But the biggest thing this did for the students was to let them see that they weren't alone and open their eyes to the struggles of their peers. You don't need all the answers. So let's see here. So then then another problem that they're dealing with is they have this really weird habit, and I'll have them verify this, of having the most exhaustive library of information in their pocket at the touch of a screen, and they don't take the time to look up the answers or even think through what the questions might be. One student, in fact, told me if a video is over 2 minutes, she won't watch it, even if it's something she needs to know. I don't know why that is, but I do know that when it matters, like in a class, they will pay attention. They engage and they have excellent input and they look up answers. So you can grab onto that and guide them through some of the tough questions and answers in a classroom setting that we might not be able to do otherwise. So let's see here. Yeah, so then another thing that they struggle with is they think that a lot of their doubts about Christianity and the Bible aren't allowed or shouldn't be voiced. And they probably aren't the only ones that have them, and they shouldn't have them. So those are lies just that are not usually addressed. So let's see here. I think I lost my place. Oh, I'm going back. Hold on a sec. Sorry, I'm really unprofessional with this. Okay, so let me go back here. Where am I, Kenna? Not there. Is that right? No. We talked about those. Unanswered questions. Sorry, guys. If you paid for a professional, you didn't get her here. Is that where I am? Okay, let's just start here. So, what can you help these teens with? Just based on the fact that you have lived in the culture longer than they have means that you've dealt with some of this and worked through some of the lies of the world. So even if you can't think of a specific one now, you'll definitely recognize it when it comes up. And even if you didn't face the exact same things that they're facing, you can still listen well and point them to the ultimate source of all truth. You can do this. And this one too, as you've grown in the gospel and sanctification, you can definitely relate and encourage from your own personal perspective that no one else can. And you can point them back to the gospel. You can do this. And this one too, we've all experienced doubts along the way of our Christian walk, and voicing some of the ones you've worked through and listening to theirs is incredibly helpful and encouraging. You can do this. So that just leaves this one. And on this list, this is the one that you're going to need some help with. And the good news is you're here at the conference, and there are lots and lots of great curriculum out there that you can choose from depending on your criteria. So you can do this. In fact, our keynote speaker, Josh McDowell, his son is big into the apologetics world, and he has on his website here, I have the link for you if you want to screenshot it, or you can just Google apologetics curriculum, and his will probably come up in one of the top. But he's got all of these curriculum on here, and they're all different like lengths, different sessions, all the stuff that you can choose from. I can only talk about the one that we used because I did a full year long class. And so we use this, it's a whole school year long, and it's 3 different years. So we started with the understanding the times, which is worldview, and then understanding the faith. I think you're officially supposed to do them in the other order, but I think it worked well to do it the way that we did it. So this is a full year long one. But the good news is the great the great curriculum is why you guys can totally do this, because you're using the experts. They're actually the teachers and you're the facilitator. So what does it take to successfully facilitate a class? We just went over good curriculum, so you just do some research and find what fits your time and how you feel comfortable teaching. And that's about 90% of the way done. Now, how about this next point, your desire to learn and research? If you're like me, you probably have a stack of apologetics books that you've been meaning to get to. And there's a ton of videos on YouTube that I'm sure that you wanted to watch, but you just haven't got to it yet. So if you want to step into this role of leading a class, you just move those stacks of books and videos from a want to now you have to. And that's great motivation. So if you don't have a lot of apologetics background, this is where you get to build that up. As any good homeschool teacher will tell you, you stay 1 to 2 weeks ahead of your class, you read what they're reading, and then you research any points that are unclear or confusing. In fact, this is where it's probably a plus that you're not an expert in apologetics, because if something is confusing for you, it probably is for them. So you get to use that to find what points you're going to focus in on. So, and with the wealth of information that's available for free online, it's just really a matter of putting in a little time digging around. We used a lot of really great YouTube videos that the kids just really enjoyed, and me too. There's some short ones, remember, you're going for about 2 minutes or less. William Lane Craig of Reasonable Faith has really good videos. We loved these ones. Responding to Challenges by, this was Stand to Reason. Their short videos are really good. Maven Truth has some really great Mormon and atheist role play videos where he goes in and speaks to a youth group like he's a Mormon or an atheist. And those were really fun to watch. And Impact 360 also has some good short videos that just hit those really tough points really well and explain them maybe in a different way. So this is actually the fun part of leading the class. You get to learn along with them. And you're pretty much guaranteed that any questions you have, they're going to have. So read and watch and until you understand this concept, or at least understand it a little bit better. And then all you have to do is share what you learned. So now there's a few tips and tricks from years of teaching at a co-op. First, I'm going to tell you what did and did not work. So lecturing did not work, and it makes it hard for you and boring for the student. Since you're a facilitator and not an Oxford professor, you just need to be honest and upfront with your students and tell them that you're learning along with them. Don't kill them by reading the text out loud or putting together a PowerPoint about what they just read. The best use of class time for apologetics is actually just a lot of discussion and conversation. I used what is called the flipped classroom model, where the students and I would read the chapter and do the work a week before class. And then in class, we would use the time to discuss, to role play, to ask and answer questions. And it helped them solidify in their own words what they've learned. So, okay, let's move on to some real practical tips that helped out in my classes. First is to be the first in the classroom if at all possible. I wasn't always, but being there to greet each student as they come in makes them feel noticed, especially the quieter ones, and it keeps your classroom in control. In the classrooms where I did show up after the students were in there, the chaos had kind of already started. Kids were loud, things were being thrown, chairs were being stacked, there was wrestling going on, and it's really hard to get everyone reined in. Being there first, it actually helps eliminate that, or at least you can stop it when you see it starting. So being there first was really crucial. It's also good to enjoy your times with the students, but there's a fine line between control and chaos. One great lesson I learned from my very favorite high school teacher was never let them see you smile until Thanksgiving. I never could make it that long, but for the first month or so, if you can be more firm and consistent than jokey and relaxed, it just helps set the tone. My oldest son actually went to an incredibly strict military school, and they definitely believed in being firm. They had to maintain control of tough students, but they also earned the students' respect and trust. So starting off firm and having fun at the proper time will teach your students that you take this seriously, and they should too. So discussion-based classrooms can get really loud and chaotic quickly. So before we even started our first discussion, I told them the ground rule was always one conversation going on. It served as a good catchphrase that I could say when side conversations started, and there were even a few times that the students reminded me of that rule. And bringing in guest speakers is great. If you're blessed enough to have an apologetics team at your church, bring in some of them, especially the ones that will stand on tables and shout at your students. Honestly, this was totally staged, but what a blast. We did have quite a few guest speakers come into our class, depending on their topic of expertise and what we were studying. So you might recognize Roy from the main sessions. He was great. He's very fun to have in class. And then at the beginning of the summit curriculum that we used, they start by laying a foundation of the Christian faith. And during that section, I invited our teaching pastor in as a guest speaker, and he actually brought his old high school Bible in, and he passed it around to the students as he just answered questions and talked to them. He got huge bonus points for a 3D visual aid, but he didn't stand on tables and shout. So we also had our missions and outreach pastor come and role play with the students, which was really good because it was nerve-wracking, and it had to, when you get that anxiety up and then they're still having to think, I think that was really good. And then we had another high school teacher come in and share with them about his experience in the military and sharing faith with others. And each guest speaker made a really deep impact on the students. And I think talking to real people face to face as much as you can is a nice change up from, just me and YouTube videos. But if you don't have a way to do that and you're just starting off small, one thing you can do that we did was we would break up on YouTube. They have some of these like hour-long atheist versus Christian debates. And so we would often break that up into like 15 to 20-minute sections and watch those. And that led to some really excellent discussions and some more like on your feet kind of thinking for them. And even though they kind of claim that they won't watch a video over 2 or 3 minutes, some of these were really, really good, and it really captured them. And because they're in a class and they have nothing else to do, you can get like 15 to 20 minutes out of them most of the time. And by the way, just on a side note, John Lennox here is pictured in both of these videos. If you have not listened to or read anything by John Lennox, I really encourage you to. He is a great apologist because he's winsome and he's sharp, has a sharp wit, a really good sense of humor, and a really amazing British accent. But he has even like the celebrity atheists that he debates, like here Hawkins and Hitchens, they seem to be kind of won over by his demeanor. And like all the cool kids say, he's savage. He's pretty cool. So another one of the probably the best ways that we spent our times was in role play sessions. These sharpened their skills at thinking on their feet kind of in a stressful situation because it was pretty much just me or whoever we had come into class and the student in front of the class. So that right there added enough stress that it wasn't just, a jokey kind of thing to do. One memorable example was when one of the students, so I was the atheist and the student was the Christian. And so I kind of set up the scenario of, I'm a guy and I kind of have this goth look about me and I am hostile to God, no interest in any spiritual sort of things. The world is all there is. And if there was a God, he'd have to be cruel and hateful because this world is a mess. And how could God just let good people die at random, like his 6-year-old sister? How could a loving God do that? So that was kind of the setup. And the student listened and then very carefully started the discussion talking about some of the facts that we had learned about, why God lets bad things happen. But then the whole class was like, no, stop. No, don't start listing off, like at least respond to the guy and, kind of empathize with him. So that was really fun. And he still remembers that to this day. Also, another great point of if you can, and it's a smaller class, one of the best things you can do in a class with teens is snacks. Food speaks deep into their hearts and they're always hungry. And these longer videos that we watched of like the debates and stuff, sometimes just having something to eat or drink while they're watching it kept them alert and engaged. And for the first couple of weeks, I think I brought it, and then they did a sign up sheet and other kids brought it. So it's not a huge thing for you to do. Again, there's considerations, obviously. There's allergies and with COVID, can you do that or stuff? But if you can, I think that this is actually really valuable. And one of my classes started at 3 p.m. and everybody was so done with learning at that point. But yeah, I think that having, a snack kind of helps loosen the mood a little bit and get them more alert. So popcorn or whatever you can, or heck, even a package of Oreos, goes a long way. And there's nothing like seeing teens smile with Oreos in their teeth. So finally, you need to be prepared to be challenged. And I don't mean have your authority challenged. Hopefully that's going to be fine because you're firm at the first. But be prepared to have hard questions asked and have all the eyes on the classroom turned to you. This won't kill you. Don't panic. I survived 100% of them, but there were some that were touch and go. Most are usually asked from pain or suffering in the student's personal life or somebody that they love. And when this happens, and it's not if you're teaching this, if you're facilitating class, it's when it happens, you can just be honest. And sometimes the best answer is, I don't know. In fact, it's absolutely okay to answer that way. And starting there will actually help gain trust and respect from the students rather than stumbling through a partially formed lame answer that you kind of maybe have put together. Don't ask me how I know that one. But be sure to make it a priority if they do ask these questions and you have an I don't know answer, to look it up and to get back to them. And or if you want, it's even better, I loved doing this, is when a good question like that was asked, you make it an assignment for the students to look up and we can discuss it in the next class. And that was really fun because maybe my answer that I looked up wouldn't quite be what they were looking for, but if the other kids are answering it, they tend to know a little bit better about what they're meaning and can go a little bit at a different angle, which was really nice. So the main thing, if you remember nothing else from all of this talk, the ultimate power move for leading a class is to pray. Pray as if your class depends on it, because it really does. I had many frank conversations and arguments with God that I was not the right person to do this, of course, after I started it, many weeks. But God is faithful. Yes, I messed up. Yes, I still don't understand what a quantum vacuum is. I don't understand crossing infinity or any of those philosophical kinds of questions. But praying for yourself to have wisdom is really the best thing that you can do. And then just going out there and doing it scared. Pray for your students to have understanding and to fall in love with Jesus even more as they learn about their great God. Praying kind of helps take it off of your shoulders and put it back on God's, where it belongs. Because you're not the teacher and you're not the Holy Spirit. You're a listener, a facilitator, and a tool used in God's hands. There are so many teens out there that need someone to care enough to get past the happy, selfie exterior that they quickly put on. But remember that these smiling faces have these lies, questions, and doubts hidden behind the carefully guarded exterior. So starting a high school apologetics class is really just another form of discipleship. It's probably one of the biggest adventures actually that you can take. You have no idea what is around the corner, but man, what a ride. So remember, it's not teaching as much as it is listening and learning and discussing. You don't need a degree. You don't need to have a slick answer for every question. And you don't need to have a complete understanding of everything in the Bible or in apologetics. All you need to do is bravely step into the role of an ambassador, listen to, share, discuss, learn together, help the teens and young adults that God will put into your life, untangle the lies, and be tethered to the truth in a way that no one else can. I really should have had like some cool, inspiring music right there. Anyway, so that's kind of it for the formal portion of my talk. I was told that in the last bit of time that it's time for you to grill me with questions, and I'm going to bring in Kenna, who is one of my former students, and there might be another one that's joining us a little bit here. And I know this was like a huge overview, and if I was you, I'd actually want some more detailed information. So if you have questions, you can send them in and my host will give them to me. So Kenna, you want to come over? We're going to squeeze in here.
Thanks, Kari. As Kari mentioned, just to go ahead and send any questions you may have over to me in the chat, and I will get those conveyed to Kari.
So I guess while we're waiting, I'll introduce Kenna. Kenna was there for 2 years of my classes. So she did the worldview one first, which actually worked out really good. I think we knew a little bit more about some of the subjects. And then she did the second one, which was understanding the faith, right? Yeah. And I don't know, can I interview you since nobody's asking questions yet? Sure. Okay, what do you think was some of, I know you can't say the most valuable, but what were a few valuable things that you got from the class?
Definitely just how to bring up the kind of topics in a normal conversation, because chances are everybody has the same questions about life, and you just need to learn how to get them to ask them out loud. And that was a skill that was really helpful to learn in the class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember, I think you were the one that said, no, I don't want to do the role play. That's really stressful.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was really good. And I think all the students admitted that it was good to have that stress and to learn to think clearly under some less than hostile situations.
All right, we have a few questions coming in here. First, I guess, let's start with this one. Is there an email address that people can contact you for future help with regard to starting an apologetics class?
Sure. I guess I can just let me write it down because this is just my personal email. It's Kari, Kari, and company.
Okay, if you send in the chat to me, I will make sure everyone gets it in the
Oh,
chat.
okay. Kari and company at comcast.net. And I would be glad to help you as much as I can.
Just send it to everyone if you want.
Oh, okay. Ken is also tech support. Yeah, Comcast. Yep.
Yeah, sorry about the typo in the first one there. Anyway, we have a couple other questions as well. One of them is asking you, your class was in a co-op setting. Have you seen any classes offered through a church youth group? And if so, do you know what the best times are to meet for students and for how long at one time?
I don't personally know of classes that have done youth group. Have you guys haven't done any formal kind of things in youth group, right? I think you've had people come in and speak like apologetics ways, but not like a formal class. As far as time, that's why my one class was at 3 p.m. because a lot of the students were done with, if they were going to any number, like we had people at private, at an academy school and at public school that could come at 3. So that was the time that seemed to work best for them. I think weekends, just nobody really wants to do a class on the weekends. So if you can do it like during a weekday, and we only met one time a week, it's just once a week. And then I gave them assignments to last for the whole week. And then we came back and discussed. But it seems like if you can get it close to the school hours, like where they could be done, that worked out really well. So yeah, we met, well, the one class we met at 3 p.m., that was the first class we did, and that was once a week. And then in this other class we met because it was, most of my students were already at co-op. So we just met, I think it was at 2 or 1, it was right after lunchish. And both of those are just one time a week. And the curriculum makes, I think pretty much any curriculum you have makes it pretty easy to give them a week's assignment. Like we did one chapter in the one that we did. And so they just had to read the chapter and there was always a video that they watched. And then they would come back to class with that done, hopefully. And then we would discuss it and go from there. No, it was, it's just like a mom's run kind of co-op. So we just had people come in that would just come in and talk for half an hour. Sometimes they took the whole class. But yeah, they were usually pretty willing to just come in and speak to the students for an hour or so. And well, actually, we did pay them with snacks.
Yeah.
We did have, Kenna made some great snacks, and so she paid that way. Yeah.
Yep.
I guess Ruthie's not going to come, so you just have me and Kenna. Ruthie's doing, she was another student, but she's doing the virtual college tours because she's a senior this year. And Kenna, you graduated last year.
Yep.
As a senior, so she's done with all of my classes. Probably pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
All right, a couple more questions here. Someone's asking about the particular curriculum that you used. Is there a particular curriculum? They weren't at the beginning of the session, so.
So yeah, I only used the one, but actually, and I brought it here. The summit curriculum is set up for a whole year. So this is the second one that we did. And I don't know, I really enjoyed this. It has like 20-ish pages a chapter that they had to read. I mean, it's pretty thick. And then they have links to a video that they could watch. And this is the only curriculum that I have done. There are other curriculum out there. Like I just ordered this one because I was curious. We watched a lot of his videos, Frank Turek's, and this is just more of a workbook. I think it's about 8 to 10 weeks long. So if you were going to do like a session with a youth group, you could find it. And that link, the Sean McDowell link, had this on there and the summit, and then whatever else. He had some shorter ones and longer ones. Did that answer the question fully?
We have another question here for the students, actually. So the question is, how has the apologetics class changed the way you discuss your faith with people?
It has definitely changed the way, I can't speak for all the students, obviously, but it's changed the way I view my approach, because when I went into the class, I was thinking my job was to convert people, and that's not my job. This class kind of helped me to realize that my job is to kind of put a bug in someone's ear and kind of get them thinking about it, but you can never really be sure that you're the person to convert someone. That's the Holy Spirit's job. And that has been really valuable in my personal life and going off to college now, because it's a lot less stressful to think that I don't have to convert someone. I just need to give them enough information to get them thinking about what they believe and if that's really the best thing to believe. And yeah, that was really valuable to me.
And do you feel like hearing some of the questions and maybe having, even if it might be a rough idea of an answer, like at least you felt somewhat prepared?
Yeah, that definitely helps, because there are like a lot of questions that are really common, especially on the college campus, and a lot of those were covered in this program we used.
That's good. Yeah, and there really are. I mean, when you listen to a lot of apologetics and read stuff like this, there's really only a few big questions that are just worded different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't, that's why I'm saying you don't have to know all the things. You can just know enough to, yeah, put a pebble in their shoe, and have them think. Yep, I did grades. I did grades. And that's exactly why, because I think that the motivation is lost if it's just a pass or fail, or you participated, good job class. So we did, and the grades were not, I wasn't grading so much there, oh well, you didn't quite answer that one right. I was just grading, are they at least sounding like they read the chapter and had an answer that would work, if they were in a conversation. So the grades were, well, and then as also, Kenna was one of my favorite students that never answered in a complete sentence.
Yeah.
So, I graded for that. Like if you're having a discussion, you got better. You got better after a few snarky remarks from me. And so, yeah, did they answer the question? Did they meet my requirements of at least having it in a full sentence? And did I feel like that they had a good input on the question? So it was pretty easy grading, but it kept you, at least you knew that you had work to do, and it kept them up and current. Yeah, that was fun. I do miss having you in class and writing snarky things on your paper.
Yeah, that was fun.
Oh, while we're waiting, there's a couple books too. If you guys want, if you're like me and you want to add to your apologetic stack, this book was amazing. We actually saw him. Were you at the conference last year? So he's had some videos, a lot of videos that we watched in class, and this is a really good book just on teaching yourself, and then you can pass that along to the teens. So Tactics by Greg Kokel. And then this one, this is a participant's guide. The real book is black. So get the book, not this. Ruthie has my book. So the next generation will know. I would say that this is probably recommended reading before you start the class. This book is great about just talking about what you're getting into with this age group and kind of different ways to reach them. This was really, really an excellent book. So I would highly recommend these two.
Yeah, I'll put a personal plug in for Tactics there. I've gone through that myself. Has great conversational ideas, and also I'm a big fan of Columbo, which is mentioned quite a bit in the Tactics book.
Yeah.
Another question here from our viewers. So this person says, I homeschool just one son. How would you suggest getting around not having other kids there to discuss things with? I feel like we're really missing out on that one big component. I'd like to start out, or I'd like to start in apologetics in the church youth group, however the timing and getting them on the go or getting them to go is the obstacle. Suggestions?
So let me make sure I'm understanding this right. Suggestions on if you are running the class or doing a class with just your son, just one student, is that correct?
That's what it sounds like, yes.
Okay. If I were doing it, and I would totally, if you were doing it with your own son, I would do this full on year-long curriculum. And as far as like discussions, you could definitely have those with them because there's a lot of stuff. Like, okay, when we did class, I would have them read through, and one of the things was read through with a highlighter. And then they would highlight stuff. And then when we met, like the first thing we do is what stood out to you guys? And then they would just share. So that would be excellent to do with your son, is you both read through the chapter. And like my son and I, we had 2 books and we would read through the chapter, and then in conversations that happened, or sometimes he would come to me, and you probably felt that too. He's like, this says this, or this, listen to this guy. Like he'd read me a quote from something and he'd be all like, up in arms. Like there are sometimes you guys got like, what? So the conversations just flow. And I think if you're just doing it with him and you're just doing the curriculum and you're watching the videos that they have, especially the Summit one has excellent videos, we would just talk about, well, what did you think when this happened? Or he would get all, yeah, why are they saying that kind of thing? So you could totally do it small. I would, however, if it was possible, encourage you to invite some of his friends and, make it work, maybe even with discussion time where they wouldn't have to sit and do the actual work, but have them come over and discuss over dinner or something. But if you can't, and it's just you and him, yeah, it'd totally work.
All right, thanks, Kari. I actually read the last 2 questions as one, so that was why it was a little confusing. The second question was supposed to be, I'd like to start apologetics in the church youth group, however the timing and getting them to go is an obstacle. You already partly answered that, I think, but not sure if there's anything.
In starting in a youth group?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that probably what you would have to do is just coordinate with your youth group leader, your youth leader, and find out kind of like the time frame that you would have to do it. And then that would help you decide what curriculum you're going to do. And in a youth group setting, I don't think that you could really do like grades. So you would want to have more role play and discussion, and maybe have them read, like send them home with something like, watch this video. Here's a question, come back, be prepared to talk about that question, and maybe even role play a little bit. So that would just depend on, your youth leader and the time that you had. And then that I would make more fun rather than school, like to keep them engaged in like role play and never know if you're going to get called on. So you better have your stuff done. Is that good? Anything else? Oh, we're full on time.
I think so.
Tell us a story, Kenna.
A story?
Do you remember that story about when, I won't say his name, but the student started just naming off all the facts on why God let this happen, and
I
then
do remember that.
and all you guys are like,
Everybody was like, stop, no,
and
go back.
he was like, what? Because he was like he was in the apologetics mindset and not the empathy mindset. So, and that's kind of how he is anyway. He just wants, this is right, this is wrong. So that was really fun when you guys were able to say that and not me.
And that's another thing that class really taught me, because would normally be that person who would just go ahead and like rattle off all the facts and then leave them to deal with it. But empathy is as important in facts and apologetics, I think. So that was really kind of a rude awakening for me.
Yeah, and sometimes just like Greg Kokel says in tactics, sometimes just listening and empathizing, you don't always have to get to, okay, well, what do you think about Jesus? There are times when you can, but yeah, just learning that skill alone, just empathizing and how to approach those things, that was really good. There's some yelling going on in the background here, all these sessions. Anything else? Anything else you could think of? Why should somebody start an apologetics class? Why don't you answer that one? That's good.
As a teen myself, I can say that this has definitely changed the way I view the world and the way I view people who don't have the same beliefs as me. And if someone like Mrs. Denker had not had the courage to start such a class, I would not be here. I would not understand how to kindly and lovingly talk people through what they believe and help them to see the inconsistencies. I would have no clue what I was doing. So there are a lot of people out there like me who just don't want to say that they don't know what they're doing, and they need someone like you who can start a class and help them start to get familiar with this kind of material.
Yep. It was well worth it. That's like an excellent way to end. You did good.
All right. Are there any other questions? All right, looks like that's it.
Good job. We answered all the questions.